Sister claimed that my husband had an affair with her, and my parents believed her. 2 years later, her fiancé found out she was cheating and made up the whole story. It's hard to even know where to begin, but I feel like I need to get this off my chest and maybe, just maybe, find some clarity. I'm sorry if this comes across as a ramble. There's just so much to unpack. Hopefully, you guys can guide me in the right direction because I'm at a loss. I'm 30 years old, and I've been married to the love of my life, Jake, who's 34, for 8 incredible years. We have 2 wonderful children, a 6-year-old daughter and a 4-year-old son. Life was pretty close to perfect. We had a cozy home, a stable routine, and a deep connection that I thought was unshakable. Our days were filled with the usual ups and downs of family life, but overall, I couldn't have been happier. But everything changed 2 years ago, thanks to my older sister, Lily. Lily is also 34, and while our lives started out similarly, they've taken drastically different paths. Lily's experience with relationships has been, to put it mildly, extremely rocky. Until recently, she had been single for quite a while, and there's a very solid reason behind that. As much as it pains me to say it, Lily is a bit of a red flag when it comes to relationships. Her behavior can only be described as that of a neurotic narcissist. She has a habit of sabotaging her relationships, often pushing people away with her erratic and manipulative tendencies. Lily's relationships always seem to start off well enough, but they sadly never last. She has a way of getting too intense too quickly, and then things start to unravel. I've seen it happen time and time again. She'll meet someone, they'll start dating, and then she'll start picking fights over the smallest things or become so possessive that the guy feels suffocated. Before long, it's over, and she's left wondering why she can't find someone who'll stick around. It's hard to watch, especially because Lily often takes her frustrations out on me. She'd come over to my place, venting about how she couldn't find a man like Jake, and it was clear that there was a lot of resentment there. She'd say things like, "Even you found a man. Why can't I find someone like Jake?" I try not to take offense because I knew she was in a bad place, but it was hard not to feel like her words were a dig at me. Despite everything, I still loved my sister. I've always hoped she would find the man of her dreams and finally be happy. I even tried to set her up with a friend of Jake's once, thinking they might be a good match, but Lily's strange and off-putting behavior quickly put an end to that idea. She was so intense and controlling that I realized it wasn't worth risking my friendship over her. Yet, despite all of this, I continued to hope that Lily would eventually find happiness. Unfortunately, it became very clear that Lily didn't feel the same way about me. 2 years ago, Jake and I were celebrating our 6th wedding anniversary with a big family barbecue at our parent house. It had been a while since the whole family had gathered, and everyone was having the time of their lives. Our children were playing with their cousins, and the atmosphere was filled with laughter and joy. It was one of those rare moments where everything felt perfect, and I was surrounded by the people I loved most. As the evening wore on, Lily pulled me aside. At first, I thought she was going to give me a heartfelt anniversary wish. She congratulated me, and I thanked her, feeling a bit surprised by her genuine tone. I asked her what she'd been up to lately, knowing she had a new boyfriend, so I inquired about that as well. But instead of the casual chat I was expecting, Lily's demeanor changed. She looked at me with a strange intensity, and the next words out of her mouth caught me completely off guard. She claimed that after Jake and I got married, they went behind my back and had an affair. At first, I thought it was some twisted joke and even laughed, but no, Lily was dead serious. She said that after the wedding, Jake started texting her, and what began as innocent getting to know you messages soon turned into deep emotional talks. According to Lily, Jake confided in her that he and I were constantly fighting over little things. She claimed that he would ask if they could meet, and that's when the affair supposedly began. Her words left me feeling nauseous. The idea of Jake, who had always been devoted to me and our family, being unfaithful was something I couldn't even fathom. Lily said she had kept this a secret the whole time, but could not pretend anymore. The way she presented it so calmly and confidently shook me to my core, even more than the actual news. For a second, I started thinking of all the scenarios. Did Jake really cheat on me? That too with my own sister? Are we supposed to get separated? What about the kids? It took me a minute to gather my thoughts, but then I asked Lily if she had some proof so that Jake could not get away with lying. And that's where she faltered. Lily said she definitely had a bunch of evidence, but as her sister, I should trust her with or without it. That was when it hit me, Lily was lying. She could fool mom and dad, but I had observed her for years and could easily tell by now when she was being dishonest. When she realized I might be onto her, she started crying. Then came her lecture with stuff like, "I cannot believe you don't trust me," and "I told you for your own good." Lily went ahead and told our parents the same story. Very soon, all of our friends and family circled us, and Lily started screaming at Jake about how he cheated on me with her. Even though she didn't want to be part of anything, she claimed he blackmailed her. My husband was confused, just like me. At first, he thought it was some sort of unfunny joke, but when Lily started screaming like a maniac in front of everybody, things became serious. I hope my parents would help me with the damage control. After all, even if Lily's story was true, I would have been the heartbroken one. But to my disbelief, my parents sided with Lily without even caring about our surroundings. Dad started to scream at Jake, saying he had played with Lily's feelings. I felt abandoned. My own sister was telling me she had an affair with my husband of 6 years, even though I knew it wasn't true. No wife likes to hear this type of stuff. Moreover, had her story been true, my father cared more about Lily's feelings than about me, a wife and mother who would have lost her husband. When we returned home that day, Jake discussed everything with me. I trusted my husband, and I knew he wouldn't betray me like this. Before anybody thinks I'm gullible, let me tell you Lily has a history of lying. She has sabotaged several of her relationships in the past over petty lies. In fact, the reason why Jake's friend broke up with her was because she would randomly accuse him of cheating on her. She would plan her own stuff in different places in the apartment and then question him if he had brought other girls there. This would lead to a screaming match, and when he was finally exhausted, she would tell him it was just a test. The incident with us just proved this was a pattern for Lily, so I chose to believe my husband. What followed were the worst days of my life. My parents refused to hear our side of the story, choosing instead to believe Lily's version without any evidence. Our once close-knit family was shattered. Jake and I found ourselves isolated, and the atmosphere during family gatherings became unbearable. My parents treated me with cold suspicion, and Jake was outright ignored. Lily, on the other hand, seemed to thrive on the chaos she had created. She played the victim, soaking up the attention and sympathy from everyone around her. It was as if she enjoyed seeing the destruction she had caused in my life. The more I tried to defend myself and Jake, the more she twisted the narrative to make us look like villains. I tried to reach out to my parents to explain that there was no proof of Lily's claims, but it was no use. They had made up their minds, and their loyalty to Lily was unwavering. Mom even accused me of being in denial and choosing Jake over my own sister, and it broke my heart. I couldn't understand how they could turn their backs on me so easily, how they could believe Lily's lies without question. Eventually, the tension reached a breaking point. Jake and I made the painful decision to distance ourselves from my family for the sake of our mental health and our children's well-being. It was an incredibly difficult choice, but we couldn't continue living under the shadow of such a hurtful lie. After a while, this became our new normal. It was hard, but not impossible. I accepted the fact that I did not need my parents' approval for everything in my life. If they wanted to support Lily's lie, so be it. But just when I thought the drama was finally behind us, something happened that stirred everything up again. Out of the blue, I came across a post on Facebook, and guess what? Lily got engaged. She had posted a series of pictures with her new fiancé, a man named Mark, along with a long sentimental caption about how she had met the love of her life. She went on to describe how Mark had come into her life during what she claimed was the hardest time she had ever faced, a time of pain and betrayal. Ironic, huh? Reading those words made my stomach churn. The hypocrisy was astounding. Lily had painted herself as a victim, using the very lies she had told to garner sympathy and admiration from our extended family and friends. As I scrolled through the comments, I saw that many of our relatives, who had mostly sided with her during the fallout, were congratulating her and offering their support. Some even made snarky, passive-aggressive remarks clearly aimed at me, saying things like, "Good for you for moving past that toxicity. You don't need that in your life." It was infuriating. These people had no idea what really happened, yet they were quick to applaud Lily for her supposed strength and resilience. I felt a familiar sense of betrayal, not just from Lily, but from the entire family that had chosen to believe her lies without question. It was as if they had completely erased me from their lives, all while continuing to support someone who had caused nothing but pain and destruction. But what bothered me even more was the fact that Lily was now engaged to a man who had no idea about the kind of person she really was. I couldn't help but feel sorry for Mark, knowing he was being manipulated by the same lies that had torn my family apart. At first, I was tempted to reach out to Mark and warn him, to tell him about the kind of person Lily really was. But I quickly realized it wasn't my place to interfere in their relationship. Mark would have to learn the truth on his own, just as I had. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling of dread knowing Lily was once again manipulating those around her for her own benefit. Days later, I started noticing a string of missed calls from an unknown number. At first, I thought it was spam, so I didn't pay much attention. But the calls kept coming. Finally, during a break at work, I decided to answer. What greeted me on the other end of the line was a screaming Lily. She hurled every insult and slur she could think of at me. I tried to get a word in, but she wouldn't let me speak. Eventually, I managed to ask what was going on, and she screamed, "How could you pretend to be innocent after everything you've done?" Before I could respond, she hung up it. Confused, I reached out to my uncle, the only family member who had supported us during the entire ordeal. He explained that Mark had called off the engagement after discovering Lily had been lying about the affair. Apparently, Mark had been sensing that something was off in their relationship. Lily's erratic behavior had raised red flags, and he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story. Driven by his suspicions, Mark decided to check Lily's phone. What he discovered shocked him. Lily had been cheating on him. She had been meeting up with a guy she met on a dating app, and let's just say the conversations weren't friendly banter. Mark, being the decent guy he was, confronted her about the affair. Lily had no choice but to confess everything, not just about the cheating, but also about the fabricated story involving Jake. She admitted that there had never been an affair between her and Jake. She had made the whole thing up. Mark, horrified by both her infidelity and her lies, called off the engagement immediately. In the aftermath of Mark calling off the engagement, Lily's life began to unravel. Her lies were now public knowledge, and the very people who had once supported her began to distance themselves. The relatives who had been quick to believe her story about Jake and me started questioning everything. Their snarky comments and supportive messages disappeared as they realized the depth of Lily's deception. My parents, who had so easily taken her side 2 years ago, were left reeling from the truth. They had been manipulated, just like everyone else, and now they had to face the consequences of their blind faith in Lily's lies. Now, all of my family is trying to reconcile with me and my husband. Even after everything that's happened, there's a part of me that feels guilty. Maybe it's because, in my anger and hurt, I haven't spoken to Lily or my parents since the engagement was called off. I didn't reach out to see how Lily was doing after Mark left her. She's my sister, and despite everything, I still feel some responsibility for her well-being. I know she brought this on herself, but it's hard to shake the feeling that I should have done more, even if it was just to check in. Another part of me feels guilty for keeping my children away from their grandparents. They don't know the full story, of course, but they've started asking questions about why we don't visit grandma and grandpa anymore. They miss them, and it breaks my heart to see them so confused. But how can I expose them to people who sided with a lie that nearly destroyed our family? I'm left wondering if I'm wrong for cutting my family off and not reaching out to Lily, even after her engagement fell apart. Should I have done more to mend the broken relationships? Or am I justified in keeping my distance to protect myself and my family?